And so now, all of a sudden, Grubby's in the position of being forced to fight with Kodos that have stuff in their stomach. Which means that if Grubby's fighting with full Kodos, then all Moon has to do is focus Kodos one by one to combat the Kodo beasts. Because if you focus the Kodos one by one, every Kodo beast that you kill is another unit for you. It's kind of like having a really awesome Dark Ranger in your army. Every unit that you kill of theirs, comes up with a big unit for you. A bear that can cast Rejuvenation. So, in that sense, you still want to force the fight. If the Orc player is killing, devours like a ton of your units, and then runs away, what you don't want to do at that particular point is creep, or let them just sit and devour your units. You want to do something. You want to hit their base. You want to hit their expansion. You want to do something to try to force some kind of a fight and see if you can kill some of those Kodo beasts, because Kodo beasts die pretty easily, and they do have a lot of hit points, but they also don't do a lot of damage, like I said, and they have slow movement speed and take extra from Dryads. So you want to kill those Kodos and get your stuff back out again, and that's exactly what Grubby did. I mean, he lost his whole army to Kodos, but he just made a few more Dryads, and then forced Grubby to fight him, and he was able to kill those Kodos to get his army back out, and he came out on top. Another thing that I should talk about with that particular fight is that Kodos are better in situations where Grubby has, one, a solid counter to the Dryads, and B, a way to heal the Kodos. So if Grubby had been Blademaster Shadowhunter, for instance, with Healing Wave and Serpent Ward on the Shadowhunter, Kodos are all of a sudden a lot better, which makes bears, a little bit tougher. Which is another reason why Bear Dryad is a stronger unit choice against Far Seer Tauren Chieftain, whereas say Mass Talon is stronger against Blademaster Shadowhunter, because Blademaster Shadowhunter works very well with Kodos, whereas Far Seer Tauren Chieftain doesn't as much. Those heroes don't complement the Kodos very well, and the Kodos are very easy to kill in that particular circumstance. So, the game's been over for a couple minutes now. Moon came out on top by individual strategy decisions, hitting a tier 2 to protect his lore coming up, playing the Tower Rush very, very well, not panicking in the Tower Rush, focusing Grubby's individual units, and eventually being able to force Grubby out without losing everything in the process, and then creating a nice tier 3 army that was the perfect counter to what Grubby was doing. And playing the Kodo fight well at the ends, forcing Grubby to fight, and eventually losing his Kodos. All of that amounted to a victory for Moon. Now, this matchup can go a lot of different ways. Like I've referred to Blademaster Shadowhunter a lot. That's a completely different game. There are different things to keep in mind in that matchup. Maybe I'll do a commentary on that at some point too. But for a Far Seer Tauren Chieftain Orc, this is a very good way to win. Bear Dryad is very effective, and if you know how to play the Tower Rush and you know how to play the Kodo fight, then chances are you're going to come out on top with that particular unit combination. So, that's a lot of information. I was talking really fast for that whole thing, I know, but there are a lot of things to talk about with this particular matchup, and one more thing I want to talk about before I leave you all is the Orc side of this particular matchup. I mentioned that I was going to address that a little bit. There are a few things that I feel like a lot of Orc players fail to notice about this matchup. One of the things that I mentioned a couple times during this replay is that one advantage that Orc has, one racial advantage of Orc, is that they have pretty quick movement speed and a really good ability to kill buildings. Night Elf buildings are the easiest to kill of any of the 4 races. Night Elf bases are the easiest to kill. You should always be using that to your advantage. You have solid movement speed, especially if you go TC. Raiders are fast, and you have speed scrolls, meaning that you can do hit and runs all day long if you want to. And Night Elf Night Elf units are very strong, but if they never even get their tier 2 buildings working, Raiders sort of have this domino effect where if you force the Night Elf into a position where when they're behind you on units and you have a lot of Raiders, you can just pick them off one at a time as they come out, and Night Elf will never be able to get their army. All because you canceled their tier 2 buildings. You know, that tier 2 phase right there is very, very important, and you as an Orc player have a lot of ability to put pressure on them. Even if you can't take down their tier 2 buildings, you can kill their wells, or if you catch them creeping, you can force them to TP by focusing their tree, or even kill their tree if you catch them without a TP. You can do a lot of base harassment as Orc, and I feel like a lot of them fail to do that. They insist on getting on these army-on-army fights with equal food, which is where the Night Elf at tier 2 shines, because Night Elf has a really strong tier 2 army against Orc. Dryads are very good, Talon are very good, and the Night Elf Hero combination is very strong at tier 2 as well. You know, Demon Hunter, Beastmaster in this case, it works very well against the Orc army. So, you know, as an Orc player, you know, you can win if you have, you know, really great micro, and you're playing things really well with just flat out fighting them head to head. But if you can use your heroes and, you know, like whether it's a Blade Master or a Far Seer or the Wolves or the Blade Master or whatever, to keep their tier 2 buildings down, you can establish a huge advantage for yourself that's very hard for the Night Elves to come back from, believe me. That's one thing you should always keep in mind. And it's applicable at other points in the game other than just the tier 2 point. You can always be harassing their base. You know, you can force them to waste a whole lot of TPs without having to use them yourself if you play it right. So just bear in mind that's something that you can do against Elf. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is Night Elf, on the other hand, is one of the worst races at killing buildings. We don't have siege worked into the natural things that we do, and our tier 2 army is incredibly vulnerable to static defense, which is piercing, you know, towers. That having been said, Orc has some of the best tier 3 buildings in the game. The Orc tier 3 upgrades their burrows and their towers make their bases almost impossible to kill for Night Elf. And yet Orcs never, ever, ever go